Okay, I was born on Pemberville Road, and it was between Bradner and Pemberville. And on Highway 6 that crossed this highway was a place called Wayside, and that's where they had a little tiny grocery store, like the mom and pop, and they had a gas station, just a gas. I think there were 2 pumps, if I'm not mistaken, because I saw pictures of the area. What are you doing?
He's creating a documentary.
Oh, okay. And so that's where I was
Camera
born.
1 to camera 2. We're live. Okay.
Well, my mother was Nina Bell Malat Mitchell. That's who my mother was at that time. And she needed to put me up for adoption, as well as my four-year-old brother, because they made like $8 to live on, you know, not 100 or 1,000. I mean $8, and they were truck farmers, or Grandpa was. And so Grandma just said, well, let's get in the car and go. And they go out, how many houses, my older brother said, trying to find someone that would take us in, my brother and I. And I was still a baby. I have a picture of the neighbor lady's grandbaby and of me in our little bonnets, in our little cute little sweaters, you know, and white stockings and little booties and like that, sitting in high chairs out in the yard. And I got to talk to that lady, the grandmother. And so I did get adopted. It went through the court at Bowling Green, Ohio, which is Wood County. And so that was one place I lived. And then it was John and Ethel Noggle, who is his grandpa and grandma. Come on, get past that. Oh dear, let me think.
Hey, Mom.
Yes.
Emotions are meant to process. You are free, and I free you up to process your emotions. There is no one here in your way. You go right ahead. Is that understood?
Okay.
Okay? You just go right ahead whenever you want.
So
There you go.
by the time I was a year and a half old, somewhere between my birth and a year and a half old, I became, since they had named me Betty Mae, it was now Betty becoming Barbra Mae. No. And I have paperwork on that. I have the receipt of when they got my driver's license. Not driver's license. It was a card about that big, and it was to be used for my identification, so I could get a driver's license. Because up till that point, I never had anything declaring who I was except this receipt that showed I had went through the courts as a baby. So I lived on Pemberville Road. Then I was moved to Wood County. All right, then I was moved to a place outside of Rising Sun in Kansas, Ohio, and Burgoon. And this place was right the second house over from the Canaan EUB Church at that time, Evangelical United Brethren Church. And it was back a lane. And that's where my dad, who adopted me, that was where his folks lived. And they was moving up to Eiler, where we eventually moved, because Grandpa died. My grandpa Noggle died. And Dad had to go up and live in that farmhouse then to take care of his mom and to do the farming. So that's 1, 2, 3. And at that time, I was only like 1.5 to 2 years old.
Yeah, wow.
I was sitting on the floor in the living room at that house, north of Eiler, Iler, and I was playing with a Calumet tin can, Calumet baking powder, and I had blocks in it, I think, and Dad had just made sure it was really tight, so I could just shake it and make all the noise I wanted while they were busy wallpapering the walls and cleaning the floors and doing all this stuff to Grandma's house. So then I lived there until I was 19. Dean had went into the military the year before in 52 and went overseas to Korea and came back before his 2 years were up. And then we moved to Eiler and lived in a house that was in my mom's name, Esselmelgel. And so we lived there until Larry was a year old. And at that time, then we moved away from my very domineering mother, who had adopted me, and moved to Meechin Grove, just before you get to Lacarne and then Port Clinton, which made Dean's trip to work about 2 miles away. And he had been driving 40 miles every day to work.
This sounds like what Rachel and Alex are going to try to do. Move closer to Alex's work.
Yeah, and it's going to be a little tight there for you to get through, but you can get through there.
Oh, that's alright. I just wanted to see.
One bunch of pictures is right behind you. And then
Oh, yeah, and then I see the grandchildren.
and up there's you and Lady. Up there in the top corner.
Yeah. I remember that log cabin.
So how many houses has it been now? Moved out of Eiler and moved down to Meechin Grove in a mobile trailer. This is like a boxed thing. You see a lot of them. You see the parks, so they're called mobile parks, mobile home parks. And so we lived there for a while. I had problems while I was there, being ill, and so then we moved from there to Fremont. Fremont was halfway between Meechin Grove and going back to Fostoria. So now my mother could make the trip. She couldn't make the 40 miles. Her eyes were too bad. So we moved into a trailer park there called Roger Young's Mobile Home Park, RV Park. And after we were there for a while, we thought, since I was expecting again, and this would be your dad that I was expecting. So we moved from there to 709 Tiffin Street, at the other end of Fremont, Ohio.
And that's where Dad grew up.
Well, we were there until you were 5 years old, I believe. And at that time, we moved from there, sold the house because Erie Army Depot phased out. And we sold the house and we moved to Napoleon Street, which was 907. Napoleon Street. Yeah, it was 709. And Dean was traveling the loop from the base. And then he was also looking for a place to be hired. But he was finishing up the calibration team. One morning, as I'm throwing the bedding down the winding stairway, and in a hurry to get the kids off to school and everything, but I'm trying to do everything on this floor, so I'll be down there, and then I'll be down there, and I'll still have John and Tim. All these things started flying around when I moved the stuff from the base of the stairway. We had termites. I got on the phone and told the owner of the place what I was seeing, but I didn't know what they were called. And he said, those are termites, dear lady. And he says, we had everything, he says, well sprayed before you ever moved in. But we were told that eventually the eggs would hatch and we'd probably have just a few more. And I said, well, that few more is too many for me. And he said he understood completely. And so then we were just a few months there, and I'd already painted the walls brown, don't ask me why. But the room was like white when we moved there, and the sun was hitting that room through 1, 2, 3 windows and a door, glass, and it was blinding me.
Oh, yeah, the light, yeah. Yeah.
So now we've moved on to Pavilion. and
Hey,
we're
just a
moving
minute here.
to-
This is John with Mosquitoes Love John YouTube channel, and we'll be back in a moment with Barbara Border sharing her times and life. Boy, she just has some amazing stories to tell. But I just want to put a pitch in for a product that I'm all too familiar with and really, really enjoy. And that would be, again, Mosquitoes Love John YouTube channel. I just appreciate all the stories and all the videos that they have there. I've even showed some to my wife and some other people. We've got a dog and a cat that enjoy them.